Hello, everyone. I will give everyone a couple more minutes to start to trickle in, but welcome. Welcome to our fireside chat. As we wait for folks to join, feel free to head over to the chat. Just introduce yourself and let us know who you are, where you're from, what you do. Looks like we already have a hello from Seattle. Hello, Seattle. I'm over in Chicago, and I believe Mani's not too far from me either, down in Champaign.
That's right.
Yeah. And then Steve, where are you at right now?
I'm just north of Atlanta in Georgia.
Okay, down south. Probably some better weather than we're having up here in Illinois.
It's been cool but nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we have another Seattle and Highland Park, Illinois, not too far from us, Mani. Okay, we have John from Western MT. Is that, what is MT?
Probably Montana.
Montana. Okay. That's right. I haven't had enough coffee yet today. Okay. All right. Everyone's trickling in. That's great. Montana. Yes. Thanks, John. Great. Okay. So let's get started. Welcome to our fireside chat. This is reality-based as-built. So we're talking about monitoring construction sites and existing physical assets. We are very excited to have Steve Smith here as well from Nemetschek. So let's get started. All right. So like I was saying, whenever we were all joining, let's keep this interactive. Feel free to add to the chat box. You can add any questions you may have, throughout the whole fireside chat. We might get to some of them during the actual presentation, but we will be sure to get to all of them at the very end. And if you haven't yet tested the chat box, please do. Just tell us your name, where you're from, just so that you know how to access it and what everyone else is saying. Great. Okay. So next, I want to introduce very quickly the speakers we have today. Very excited for these two. First, we have Steve Smith. He is the product portfolio director for the Build and Construct division over at Nemetschek Group. And we also have Mani from our team. He is the chief technology officer here, and he's also co-founder of Reconstruct, which is very exciting. Steve, any fun facts we should know about you before we start?
Yes. So if you ever wanted to comment in the chat box in German, I'm a fluent German speaker, so I can handle it. So there you go. Something interesting.
Oh, that's tough to beat, Steve. Thanks. Perhaps something that people on the audience may not know about me. I also wear a second hat. I'm a professor at the University of Illinois. And a fun fact about me is that I always play music, hard rock music, before and after my classes, inside the class, for the students and for the audience.
I love that. Get everyone riled up and ready.
Yes.
That's great. All right. So I will go ahead and hand it over to Steve and Mani, and they will get started. Feel free to continue conversations in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Summer. Steve and I have had the opportunity of being engaged in construction and construction technology for a little bit over 2 decades, each of us. And what has been really fascinating is the evolution that we've seen in terms of how technology has enabled workflows and how several rather tedious practices that we've had has changed. And the first one that we wanted to use as a base of this fireside chat conversation that we have with you is how we track work installed in the field, or how we track progress during construction sites. So the picture that you see on the top left corner of the screen are pictures that we saw in one of the most advanced electric vehicle manufacturing plants. Walked into the site, and we noticed that some of the practices that they have are still based on what we used to see back in 90s or early 2000s, as to asking contractors to help us color code areas that they do the work every week during the coordination meeting, and how the way we document as-built using reality capture has actually evolved that practice. So you can actually see the same site on the lower left corner. And in this case, the contractor was using a hybrid of reality capture solutions from 360 cameras, laser scanning. Because it was an EV manufacturing plant, operating a drone on top of it was slightly challenging from legal purposes. But the basis of that was bringing all that energy, effort that we put into coordinated design files and marry them against reality. So you can always see installed work versus what was supposed to be done as a basis of quality control, as a basis of progress monitoring. Steve, I'm sure you can also share a lot with us on this topic. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, when I first got out of high school, I was a laborer for a GC, actually working in the field. And one of the things I noticed very early on is that, okay, what am I working on today? Where's the progress? Where do you need me, boss? Basically, and that is kind of that top part of that slide, and that is still quite evident in the market today as we go out and work with customers in the field. They're experiencing the same challenges where it's a little harder to kind of track what the different colors mean or what's happening. Jumping into seeing something in 3D is an extremely powerful tool to kind of use as you track progress in as-builting.
It's fascinating, Steve. There used to be a time I used to work for a construction management company, and in that company we had about 1,500 projects a year, one of the larger top 5 ENR companies. And at some point, I was actually in charge of looking to how we conduct our daily construction reporting, and it was fascinating exercise for me. I came across a few facts that are truly a basis of looking to reality capture as an enablement for that process. We had 1 or 2 field engineers across every one of our job sites, and our field engineers they were simply in charge of capturing daily reports. Mm-hmm. So we had subs coming inside the trailer, leaving a stack of papers on top of one another, and this field engineer sits down, and there's so much paperwork that you probably don't even walk on the site. You sit down, and all you do is you take these, you manually enter them back into some electronic daily log system. Why? Because across every one of our projects, we had this requirement of submitting these reports anyway. Did we ever trust that information? Unfortunately, I have to say no. We used to wait for an entire week for coordination to happen, and then we have everyone walk into the room, color coding 2D drawings, right? Now, fast forward today, imagine that this is data center, right? I mean, what is it, like $5 million a day amount of work that we do every day? And imagine you're waiting 5 days to learn that, the picture of the reality of what's happening is different from what these guys actually reported to you. Because sometimes we drive risk based on our perception, as opposed to where risk is truly happening on a project. But even more problematic, when you capture this feedback, where would you want to use that feedback in? Your plan, right? It doesn't matter if it's that Excel that we're using for looking-ahead planning, or if it's our Oracle P6 that we use as basic planning. All we want to do is we want to make sure that we make actions based on data, right? We understand how much work has been done. Let's go ahead and create a more reliable plan for the next few weeks. But unfortunately, this visual clearly shows that sometimes we just purely reflect that in the design, and thinking that part of our documentation should be really as built versus as planned.
I totally agree. And the thing that's interesting there too is that feedback loop between a daily report, or what we would call feedback from the field, if it's a daily report for a larger outfit, or this other piece of just, okay, what's happening today? That feedback loop there's a ramp up time to that. Like, well, what floor are we talking about? What part of the project are we talking about? Which sub are we talking about? And sometimes quickly being able to navigate in 3D and having something that kind of talks about the language about which we're talking in the project, it gets fast tracked when you can visualize it in a different way than just 2D with color codings and annotations.
Absolutely. And while you and I have been focusing on construction, we've also come across some of the challenges that we have with our existing assets, right? It was really interesting for us in the context of Reconstruct. This was sort of inbound for us. In our early days, we were being approached with our reality mapping capabilities and the desire of people wanting to create as-built documentation for them. For a majority of these assets, it doesn't matter if it's a bridge, tunnel, go all the way down to small multi-site job, convenience store next to you. We just don't have any as-built documentation at all. So when we want to renovate them, we want to do expansion, we want to look into purely condition assessment, or create a basis through replica, digital twin that can be used for inspection purposes. We just don't even have that data. And it's been fascinating to see some of these capture devices in terms of how they're supporting and enabling remote inspection. And of course, the first step toward that is let's go ahead and document the existing assets as fast as we can, as convenient as we can, and as safe as we can, because nobody wants to get into some of these challenges that we see. I don't know if you have anything you want to be adding, Steve.
No, yeah, and I think that the other piece, particularly if you're looking at something that you see, if you're doing a physical asset inspection or a job walk, to be able to use something like Reconstruct, to be able to add like a geo-tagged element and say, hey, this is where I was at, this is what happened. You can just basically say, this is where I was working. And that is not necessarily just like the top down, like this is where I was. A lot of these elements, and I like that visual that you have there of that that inspection on the top left, right? So how would you be able to show that that's in space, that it's on that face of that probably some sort of DOT project? Like, okay, I'm on this side, I'm underneath using this inspection as a talking point. Where do I append that information? Is it on a napkin? Which happens, right? Like that doesn't go anywhere. So you can quickly navigate, put something in there that's actionable and also geospatially accurate, which is also interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly fascinating. I've, been exposed to some of these practices as you have, and it's fascinating. Sometimes we take, boards and using a chart, we start documenting on them. So we remember, yes, this is a span number 5, as opposed to span number 6. That is exactly identical. We don't even know where it is. And then you come back, you have to create a report as part of our inspection practice, and you start questioning yourself, did I document it correctly? Was it the right place? And guess what? You don't have any opportunity to go back anymore. So you just truly want to know where that image has been truly capturing it. And fast forward 2 years down the road, you're going to come back and say, you know what? I want to go back and win this business again, right? Or I've already promised that I'm going to go back and, inspect it. Now, you completely forgot what is it that you captured. What you have is a 50-page report that you put together with a number of pictures. Now you go and start inspecting, and of course, there will be degradation, defects, spotting, and whatnot. And you want to correlate them. You want to say, how does this evolve over time? And just no basis for that. And of course, now it begs a question: what should we use as the base of that documentation? Maybe you want to kick this off.
Sure. So as we think about reality capture, there's a host of options. So everything from high definition laser scanning, almost surveyor level tools that can very accurately tie things back to project control, back to survey benchmarks. Those are all really I guess on the if there's a tool side and an instrument side on the board, it would be the tool side is closer to the right, instrument side would be closer to the left. And there are times when you would need either or both. I think that what we're seeing, just like we see broadband speeds increasing across time and space, the same thing is happening with reality capture data, where we're starting to see needs increase that are pushing use cases towards simple use cases as opposed to hyper complex. There will always be a need for that. Like if you're doing floor flatness, you need something much more accurate. If you're doing progress scanning and appending updated project information, issue tracking, like that is very powerful when you can simply have an operator walk a job site with a 360 camera and also be in this reality capture world where you can geospatially reference projects. So it's interesting. The cool thing I love about Reconstruct is the ability to kind of navigate all of these tools, right? You've got the terrestrial based ones like the 360 camera and the laser scanner. You also have these mobile ones, including UAVs. All of those are parts to this puzzle. All of them can generate reality capture point cloud deliverables that add an immense value. And the proliferation of reality capture data in job sites it's intense, right? It's not just these mega job sites. We're seeing it across the board. And that's been my experience being in the reality capture business before coming to Nemetschek for about 10 years. So this has been a trend that will continue. and being on the cusp of that and on the inside track of that is very powerful for construction professionals today.
Yeah, it's fascinating. When we started Reconstruct, we truly started practicing the notion of visual command center, a command center that can cater to various form factors of reality capture, because truly there's not one tool that would fit a single job or a portfolio of jobs. Even if you're working on a mid-rise commercial building project, you are going to be using many of these devices. To your point, we're going to be using laser scanning for when those critical milestones happen in your project where you want to do flatness measurement, you want to measure plumbness, and there's a critical installation that you need to worry about. And then on a day-to-day basis, it makes it a little bit more challenging to use something that is that sophisticated. It requires more effort and energy that you have to put into it. And then, of course, you can marry that or twin that against that 360, right? You strap that over your hard hat, you quickly walk around and capture. And if you have sort of hard to reach areas, fly that drone. And we always wanted to make sure that we would offer that single source of truth, at least from a reality mapping perspective. It doesn't matter how you've captured your reality data. It's all about positioning them correctly against one another and making them measurable. Measurability was also really important to us, making sure 360 generates a basis that is good enough for many of the tasks that we want to do on a quick inspection, like checking the spacing of the rebar, checking embedments, conduits. Many of those sub-inch resolution is more than enough. You don't need a 1/16 of an inch resolution that, of course, is necessary for some of them or critical activities. And of course, it begs the question: we do all this reality capture, and that's our ASCE documentation. We still have a design. We also need to worry about that. How do we approach that? And I have this as Reconstruct plus Bluebeam, but it's really broader in Nemetschek. You have a portfolio of design solutions that are loved. Bluebeam is loved for simplicity, effectiveness of communicating 2D, and then you have an entire suite of products that support design. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So the thing I'm noticing in the market is this idea of digital twins. So and I think many would probably know what that is, but on the one hand we have what we designed, and the other thing is what we have actually in real space. So the design versus what we have in reality. And that's where this digital twin comes in. And right in the middle, there will always be a sensor. Sometimes it's a person communicating things back, but very often it's some sort of sensor. And in the case of reality capture, it's lidar, it's a drone, it's sometimes it's a static camera that's monitoring a job site. Sometimes it's these 360 cameras that are doing periodic job walks. So all of this is in that digital twin space. And so as we think about what is designed in the design phase, in the pre-construction phase, even all the way through to handoff to the owner, this whole digital twin story is going to have more and more scrutiny as we think about all of the different constraints that are being pushed into the construction process. Everything about sustainability, about how things are made, who's doing what on which site, how we can do things more efficiently. All of that requires, I wouldn't say real-time data, that's super hard to do in construction, but as real-time as you can possibly make it without getting in the way. And that's the sweet spot, right? Because you have to still perform good work in a construction environment, but you also need to know what's happening. So that's always, a tough balance. And I think that what's being presented here is very interesting to us at the Nemetschek Group. And of course, you mentioned Bluebeam as well.
And this is a topic that's near and dear to me. The core problem that we have across many of our job sites is coordinating and communicating who's supposed to do what work. And it's not easy to execute on that. I mean, if you have small project, you probably have around 15, 20 subs, vendors, suppliers, owner, architect, engineer firms, and everyone needs to know what is it that we're communicating on the design side and what is it happening out in the field, so we can minimize these RFIs, minimize these change orders, minimize some of the challenges that we have on the quality process. So, through our practice, we also learn a lot, and we're reminded yet again that design evolves with construction, and that is also equally important for us to be able to bring the likes of Bluebeam, PDF files back into our system over and over to make sure folks that are doing their documentation out in the field, they always have access to the most recent design, and they can contrast that with things that are happening out in the field. And The twinning of that reality against design has also been manifested post-COVID. We still have a lot of people that do a lot of their work remotely, right? And we've learned you don't always need to be on every one of your job sites. And if you're that director of quality control, if you're that director of safety at a regional level, you can actually leverage this for high frequency inspection across all of your sites. All you need to do is to jump into these images, start doing your measurement, and contrast them against the design. And the beauty is that you can twin any form factor of these designs against any form factor of these reality captures.
Exactly.
Maybe we can start with getting a little bit deeper on the outdoor piece. I'd be happy to share a few things here on this topic. It's fascinating. When we started our company back in late 2015, early 2016, this was a moment that drones were just coming to the market. This is pre-FAA regulations. And when FAA put regulations together, of course, there were new set of requirements on the safety side, rightfully so, that were being challenged. But to the point that you made earlier on, there's always the desire of more simple solutions to be used, things that scale easily. And we know, obviously for those of us in the audience and both of us on this chat conversation that we have, it's just a fact of our lives. When you're on a job site, you're running lean teams. We don't want to call them small, lean teams. You're already overloaded with so much work that you need to do. So you always gravitate to things that are more mobile, things that are quick, and things that can be done. So we started working on mounting solar-powered cameras on tower cranes. So as the tower crane moves above the job, it keeps taking pictures and it simulates what a drone does. And every day we can generate ortho photos that can be, again, mirrored against the Bluebeam 2D PDF. So if you have a concrete placement coming up, you can go ahead and check spacing embedments opening prior to the placement. And if you're that fellow who's sitting in the trailer, you don't even need to go to the site. This is a streaming the data live for you. By lunchtime, you already have a new view of the site readily accessible to you. And so that means, you can make sure you do your inspection prior to a late afternoon placement of concrete, which is usually the practice. And the 360 piece was also fascinating. I mean, we always had the desire of, getting that started indoors, but on the outdoor side of it, to your point about simplicity, it became a really, really complementary capability. Again, I always emphasize on this, that all of them are complementary to one another. The fact that you can easily put that over your hard hat, walk around, and fascinating discoveries that we've had. People have been used that for foundation mapping in early phase of the project. We have projects in Arizona, California, all the way to Europe that we've seen people wanting to do their site documentation. Why? Because you already have it in your pocket. You just put it up, you hit record video, you're done. Video goes into the system, it's processed, and it comes back. And guess what? Auto aligned against Bluebeam 2D PDF.
Yeah, it's very powerful. That one of the things that comes to mind is construction CCTV has actually been around for decades, right? Where for safety reasons, for security of equipment, it's very often to see videos and static cameras on site. And it's also not new for photos to be taken to track progress. That's been happening again for decades. The thing that I really love about even just this like the essence of Reconstruct is this idea that we take all of this data and we serve it up for you. Like that's where I think the intelligence is. The ideas have always been percolating and permeated into the job site. I think that the power becomes, okay, now we're serving it up in a way that is actionable and useful and updated. I think that idea of that idea of just having that tower crane camera track something other than just a live feed. That's where the intelligence comes behind it, and that's what I find really exciting.
Yeah, it's also fascinating. I came back from a trip that we had, and we had a number of conversations with a group of customers, and a lot of people also ask about the feedback loop. When you document a reality, you want to bring it back into the design and use that as a basis. So obviously, we were really excited that people are processing that data with our platform. We'll be able to export it out, have it registered against the design, and if you're going to go back into your Bluebeam environment, you can pull that in and have that aligned against your 2D and use that as a base of many design coordination and many construction coordination issues that you want to do. Indoor has also been really fascinating. When we started looking to this space. In early days, the alternatives were obviously reality capture, which is purely pinning images against the floor plan. And of course, technology has evolved. There are a couple of vendors in the space that automatically map video frames against the floor plan. But for us, we really wanted to make sure we offer the same experience across the data. It doesn't matter what it is, what device is being used for the capture. So we worked on this capability of automatically generating point cloud, automatically generating mesh models, and automatically generating floor plans. And it was so fascinating. I mean, the floor plan conversation in early days was primarily around basis of navigation. So we want to make sure that people can make sense of where they are. So if you're working in a healthcare facility and you did this video walk, and guess what? You did not have even a 2D design available to you, at least we can show you where you are in the space. So it was truly an as-built 2D representation. Of course, it begged the question, can we also map that against a Bluebeam 2D PDF? And there are two ways of thinking about it. For us, we cater to many different types of jobs. Sometimes design is actually created after the reality capture. Sometimes design is already available to the team that does the capture. So we worked on two different workflows, one of which is you upload it to the drawing simply on your cell phone device. You get access to our mobile app. You can see where you are, and you hit start and you hit end. The video automatically goes into the server. It gets processed, and without needing to necessarily highlight where you started and you ended, through a number of AI algorithms, we can automatically position the as-built. So you don't need location tracking. You don't need any GPS. Of course, sometimes it fails naturally. Captures that we have are sometimes very different from the design. A good example of that is early phases of excavation work, where your design is probably showing you a foundation and none of that is visually represented in the scene. So then you can leverage some of the interactive capabilities. But then going back to that consistency of the experience, ability of doing sort of a street view walkthrough in the scene, being able to measure, being able to overlay the design, and export out these point clouds and mesh models.
Yeah, and the thing I love about indoor models, and as it relates to as-builting, is anyone who's ever done an as-built will recognize that the drawings that they got, perhaps, particularly if it's a tenant improvement job, the drawings that you receive may have been like 4 tenants ago, and in that time, so these drawings maybe had the final stamp on them in 2002. And there's been all of these other changes that may or may not have been documented. So as you're walking around looking at this 2D, you're like, that wall's not supposed to be there per the drawing. So all of these things are kind of coming out as you do your as-builting. And so this is where these reality models, even I'll call them lightweight reality models, have immense value. We're not talking about sub-centimeter, millimeter accuracy. We're talking about this wall is there, this pillar is there, this bump out is here. I didn't notice that before. All of that stuff is actionable and important to know as you kind of go in and think about what you're going to do with that next tenant improvement project.
Absolutely. And of course, the complementary skill sets of being able to bring that laser scan or structured light data right into the platform. And of course, is a huge set of projects that are already benefiting from it. And we see a number of pain points associated with that. And I'm sure, Steve, you also relate to. One of which is, all right, I did this amazing laser scan capture at the highest level of accuracy that was possible with the device, and accuracy in relative terms, in terms of whatever unit of measure you're using for the distance. And you come back and say, all right, so how am I going to be able to display that data? Then you go back and perhaps look into subsampling, and then you say, how am I going to be sharing that data? And unfortunately, we see practices of putting that data on a SD card, or I'm saying SD card, but external hard drive, and finding a way that maybe you would be able to upload that data, and then you don't know if the designer, the construction team would be able to go beyond that specific use case of the scan. Of course, many times we do these scans for, let's say, flatness measurement, to the discussion that we had earlier. But I mean, look, if you're superintendent on the job, you can also take advantage of the same data and use that as a base of your coordination. But the fact that it's not easily shareable has been one of our motives to make sure that we can load that data in and easily generate it. So this example that you see is actually a funny one. It's a hotel that this fellow used a structured light. It's actually a laser scanning device. They used to do a quick capture of space. It shows you, what you can obviously achieve with this device, and it's a, reflective surface. The point being that there are ways by which you can potentially, leverage capability in any type of space. And then the file formats, for us, it's been really interesting to make sure that we obviously, we capture these in different formats. Obviously, there are standards like likes of E57 that we can support, but again, being able to bring that the same walkthrough experience. Doesn't matter if you've done 360 documentation. Doesn't matter if you use the video on your cell phone or laser scan. Bring them, automatically align them over a project timeline. So you can do time travel, you can correlate the data, see before and after.
Yeah, the thing that I love about this is there are reasons, like we talked about picking the right tool for the trade. Like in a hotel, if it's a large scale hotel, there are huge benefits to using lidar, right? Because as things drift over time with certain technologies like photogrammetry or structured light, that can be a huge factor in how that error builds up across the project. And laser scanning or lidar would give you a tighter result in terms of how those bundles come together. But the challenge with that is that point cloud data, particularly from a lidar device that's pulling in HDR imagery, it's pulling in millions and sometimes billions of points in a project, even just for a single floor of a hotel or a hospital, for example. They're very, very heavy files that require kind of the guts and the storage capacity to be able to both store and even process and manipulate that data. That's very heavy. And so one of the challenges in the industry for reality capture has been the shareability of those files. And so again, the cool thing about Reconstruct is the ability to, okay, great, you've got a point cloud, either derived from a simple photogrammetric job walk with a 360 camera, or you've got this high fidelity laser scan. We can handle both. We can timestamp them and we can compare them against each other. And clearly, if you're doing advanced calculations and you really want to know the dimensions of something, the lidar is going to be more accurate. You can use that, and you can display it and share it, which wouldn't require a trip to the VDC team to give you a deliverable that can be consumed, right? It's quickly shareable across different stakeholders in a project, regardless of how it was captured.
Yeah, I mean, you point out to something that is pretty fascinating. Using it as a base of, larger scale, one-time, really accurate as-built documentation. We've come across, partners and clients that they work on really large manufacturing facilities. Let me just share the example in the context of manufacturing or pharmaceuticals. And they always want to have an up-to-date representation of their scene. So they actually own these devices. Sometimes they even operate it on their own. But of course, these sites are dynamic places. A lot changes even within a month, let alone quarters. So one of the ways by which we've been sort of looking to leveraging is you say, hey, you know what, you're doing your scanning. Great, bring that into this consistent viewer experience. And then those moments that changes are being made, you don't want to send that team and do the entire capture. It may even take you a week to capture the entire facility. But guess what? For that small area of change, whether room, zone, what have you, you can just go in and quickly use a video camera or even use your cell phone camera, videotape that, and rest assured, data can be processed, we can generate the point cloud, and you can automatically align that against your former data. So now you have access to a live model, which, yes, it is patched between 1 year to the next year, but next year you'll be able to go back, and if you truly want to do one more proper documentation of it, do that type of capture. So for us, it's not just been the 360 photos, but also pinning images, which is what superintendents, a lot of PMs love. The simplicity of just walking in and I want to go ahead and take a picture. Yeah, I want to go ahead and take a picture. One was making sure, the conventional sort of 360 mapping, which Bluebeam also supports, right? You'll be able to bring 360 and map them against the floor plan. But then the other one was democratizing the capture. You're going to do your reality capture, even in the case of progress monitoring, once a week. But there are many moments subs want to take pictures. Your field engineers are walking around and they see a defect, a quality item, or simply an RFI. You want to go ahead and take that picture. And what do? You may end up putting in a completely different platform. So the idea was to make sure that, hey, again, going back to that single source of truth, you'd bring that. It will be sitting in the same coordinate system. The example that I have here is a floor plan, but this, of course, can be an ortho photo generated from a 360. And people love it. That example for a video was really eye-opening for us. there was a documentation being done for a TI job, and it was obviously they walked quickly with a video camera and did the entire capture, and they come back and say, hey, you know what? Can we go back and take a few more photos? And of course, if you load that ortho photo into your cell phone app, our cell phone app, Reconstruct, then you'll be able to go back to the place and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and, again, add one more picture here, add one more picture there. And everyone gets sort of that live visibility to those small areas that needs to be updated. I don't know if you have any thoughts you want to be sharing on this.
No, I think that this idea of being able to tag issues is critical. So yeah, definitely part of that whole process of being able to visualize things in space.
Now we get into the fun piece of it. How do we tie all of them together so we can generate sort of 4D reality, 4D measuring time, or how do we design the schedule, and how do we bring them into alignment? And I don't know, maybe you want to start on this one.
Yeah, this is really a fascinating area where there are definitely, we'll just call it a target-rich environment. One of the challenges that we're seeing in construction globally, it's not just here in the United States, but it's a global conversation, is how to get construction people in the field and everywhere thinking in terms of models in 3D versus 2D. And this is one way to make that jump a little bit easier with the simple shareability of 3D data. Because clearly, if we have all this really rich BIM data, kind of going back to that's kind of where the reality capture, like 3D space is with reality capture and lidar and photogrammetry. That's where it resides. But sometimes that ability to consume becomes a problem, or even to visualize and understand. Anyone who's jumped into a model has found themselves asking the question, what am I looking at? Sometimes it just opens up whatever the program is, and you're looking at the corner of something, right? It's like it's only 2 inches off the ground. It happens, right?
Yeah.
You're like, what am I looking at? Whereas that 2D view is maybe a little easier to communicate. And so this type of simple, lightweight, shareable, browser-based approach just makes that barrier to entry much easier. And then being able to then combine that and compare that to what was actually conceived in the design phase is actually it's super powerful.
Yeah, you just remind me of some of my long ago experiences when I used to do more BIM coordination for MEP, and I've done I've created BIM execution plan many times, and you always assume that people are gonna follow the conventional steps in the BIM execution plan, which is let's go ahead and define what our coordinate system is, right? And let's go ahead and make sure all the designs are following the same coordinates so we can easily integrate them against one another. And gosh, now that I've actually seen this on thousands of projects that we've done Reconstruct on, it's fascinating. Of course, there are different types of practices for all kinds of good reasons. Right? Sometimes design is in some arbitrary coordinate system. Sometimes it's a local coordinate system that owner has had for more than 100 years. Gosh, we actually did one thing with a pharmaceutical company. They had their own name on the local coordinate system of the area. I've never seen that before. Of course, many different local coordinate systems that we use. So for us, it was really important to find a way that we can easily let people bring their reality and have that align against whatever coordinate system they want to have, whether or not it's been properly mapped into a GIS system or not. So we worked on a number of techniques, one of which is obviously when you set up your project, you can bring the 3D models from Nemetschek platform, then you can bring the Bluebeam 2D drawings, the 2D PDFs. And one thing is you can interactively place them in the right place. So now you have a stack of 2Ds against a 3D model. And then as you perform your reality captures are, one, being automatically aligned against the 2D drawings. And as a result, they're being automatically mapped against the BIM. And over time, every reality map is being mapped against the previous one. So now you sort of create this time machine that always gives you that desire of seeing design or plan versus reality. And this coordinate system has been a fascinating topic to make sure that it scales across different types of projects. All right, now that we've looked into this, the application of it, of course, people say, all right, well, what are the top use cases that you always see from contrasting your design against the reality. You know, I shared that example of, large number of projects that we used to do in that construction company and desire of doing progress tracking. You can never do progress tracking without thinking about quality. You do not approve progress unless if the work in the field has actually achieved quality as defined in the specification of the project, nothing really beyond that. And that means design versus reality. Whatever design shows, whatever we've agreed to design, and we can all make the argument that, yeah, we put these stamps on the 2D and that's our IFC being issued for construction. Yeah, you have to marry that against the reality. Or if you truly have started a BIM-driven process and you want to leverage that as a base of it, you put that together. Now, this means differently to different personas. If you're a VDC person, you probably say, you know what? I spent all my energy coordinating all that BIM. I want to go out in the field and make sure the work out in the field follows my, coordinated model. And this example, it's really eye-opening. You see, I bet this team had spent a lot of time coordinating that, that HVAC system should have a riser and the fire protection sprinkler system should go under. But you see, sometimes we just always have this coordination and communication issues. Somewhere, somehow, communication broke and the team wasn't informed that, hey, you have to follow a change in the design, and at least you can start preventing these before they escalate and grow. You'd be able to start addressing them. And you may say, well, now this is not a thing that we can do every day with that laser scanning device. And guess what? You don't have to. As long as you get your video documentation done, if this is a truly, truly critical item and you want to go really high resolution for measurement purposes, guess what? You will define this as an item of critical. You send your team back and do one extra capture, right? At least you have an opportunity to catch these before it become an issue. I mean, this is an example of indoors. We had all kinds of cases of floor plans, these things that are happening on the job. I mean, what is it? 6 to 20% rework average across different types of projects. So it happens. But it's really important for us to be proactive about it, right? Being able to have some form of documentation that can alert us on potential issues. I don't know if you want to be adding anything to this topic.
No, this happens all the time with issue detection and making sure. And previously, this would be maybe detected when that project manager or the construction management professional, whoever it is, does a job walk 2 or 3 weeks later, right? And that nice orange ladder that you can definitely see the MEP guys were there. That's the sign one that this is relatively new. I'll bet you that this project manager was not there probably not on site at that moment. And so if you're just imagining that, hey, I know someone just captured with their walkthrough, let me just check and see that against the model. This feedback loop was much faster. And it's not to say that the MEP even did the wrong thing. That happens too, right? Where there might be different constraints, or the model might have changed, right? So what we're seeing here isn't necessarily, I mean, it may be in this specific example, but it could be that the model doesn't reflect the new reality that the change order was already approved. So this opens the ability to just have a conversation around what is being shown in reality versus the design. It's a great conversation starter, and that's what construction's all about. It's about conversations and collaboration.
Absolutely. And autonomy, another interesting topic. When I started working on reality mapping as a technology, mostly from a scientific perspective, many years ago, this notion of autonomy wasn't really a thing. At the time, what I had to worry about is that, do people even have consumer-grade digital cameras that they can take pictures with? And fast forward, there's been obviously a lot of transformation in that space, starting with the drones and starting with, in ground robots. First exposure that we had as a company to ground robot, as unusual as it may sound, goes back to 2015. We started working on Sacramento Kings Stadium project prior to establishing our company. And with the team that we're working with, they had just been exposed to this problem of flying a drone, and they were really excited. But this was a stadium project, a large site, and that meant a lot of work. And going back to this notion of, understaffed teams, they really wanted to see if they can actually use some of a ground robot. It was really eye-opening to me that, when people, are being exposed to these pain points, this notion of leveraging a robotic platform as a co-worker, as an enabler, starts growing. And of course, you see all these kinds of pictures. These are all inspection. Like, the fellow who's crawling into the plenum on the left side, or our inspectors, engineers that are putting themselves in all kinds of safety risks of just doing inspection on the building facade or under the bridge deck or side of the bridge. No longer needs to be that way. We have complementary technology that can enable them so they can actually stay within a more safe environment, and only get engaged in these activities when truly an extra step is necessary.
Yeah, and the proliferation of autonomy in reality capture is going to continue. There's many platforms. There's a lot of buzz around this space, and I see continued innovation around how these autonomous solutions will start to capture and even just publish without much human interaction different deliverables on a daily or regular basis.
Absolutely. So it leads us to bring it back home. We are in the business of managing our teams, managing our people, so we can deliver our projects on time and on budget back to the owner. And of course, you want to generate some insight from the data and raise the question, is it going to be retroactive? Is it going to be proactive? So in early days, our focus was, all right, let's just go ahead and start helping folks communicate what has been done right and what is not done right, and use some visual color coding so we can communicate that. And over time, we actually started, this is prior even to starting Reconstruct, started learning that, yes, people already practice lean construction. We have to, right, on job sites. And the underlying promise with lean is to be more proactive, so we can create a reliable plan as opposed to reacting to it. So then we had to worry about inventing a completely new set of metrics that can highlight what the risk is in a form that is really, really easy to understand. I mean, look, that picture you see on the right side, you have all the subs in the room, right? You cannot go deep on the technical side. What you want to do is you want to get work done really, really fast, because every single person that showed up on the job site is busy. Not only do you have this project, they probably have a few other projects that are running simultaneously, and you want to get the message communicated to them immediately. And what better than you say, hey, you know what is the purpose of this meeting? Coordination meeting. What is it that we're doing? Updating the plan. So let's look into risk, and let's look into what are the areas that are at risk for delay. This was really also interesting. I mean, I'm sure you can also relate to this. You go into a coordination meeting. How do we run these meetings? We go around the room and call company A, company B. We naturally disengage the broader team into conversation, right? And everyone just reacts. Yeah, we did this area right. These are what we learned, and this is the base of improvement. Now, what if you color code those areas like red and yellow you see on that larger screen behind the superintendent? Say, hey, you know what? This is a risk. Now, if I'm sitting in that room, if I'm on that mechanical contract, I'm going to say, gosh, this is the area that my team is going to be moving into, right? So I have all the incentives in the world to focus helping this project problem, because it impacts my own team. And impacting my team, if I'm on a hard bid project, this is my own profit.
Yeah, for sure. And it all comes around that ability to communicate and maximize people's time. What we're hearing from the field, it is a fact. We read it in the papers in terms of, I don't have enough people to do this job. There is a constraint on expertise in the field across all levels in the construction space. And so people are busy, they're slammed, their backlogs are big, and their project loads are heavy. And so if you can get to the point quickly and visually, right? We've heard it since we were young. A picture says 1,000 words, and it's 100% accurate. Being able to visualize is better than just looking at some items or actions list, right? The sub A, you handle all of these 10 things. Sub B, you have these 11 or whatever. Now, those are important tools, but being able to contextualize them quickly with a visual view gets them spun up fast.
Absolutely. It goes back to how we started, right? There are many of these conversations that are going to happen in the project. You may have to use a different tool for it, but you still want to have that one source of truth for all of it, right? And maybe you can actually look into it slightly differently. If you can help us map this out. And all right, now we've learned that there's a bunch of different things that we can use. What is that process? Who should do what? Maybe you'll share some of your experience on that front.
Yeah, I think that this is a very interesting slide, because I'm glad you started with people. because that's really where it starts. And then you put them in a structure, right, of what are they going to be focusing in on, and then you ask that question that we put on the previous slide: what tool are you going to use if it's a reality capture process, for example? So these are all big parts of the journey, and I think that the value of something like a platform like Reconstruct is that it checks the box across those three areas.
Yeah, I mean, your point. The technology piece is rather the easier piece. Getting buy-in from everyone that there's value for them, and establishing a workflow that is repeatable on a weekly basis, whatever that cycle is for the job, becomes really important. Which begs the following question: all right, so how do you get that buy-in? You have to demonstrate value. And when we work with different companies, sometimes even when we work with the same company but the different projects, say, well, we want to see that ROI framework. We want to see that for us, for the type of project we do. And sometimes they feel like type of project that they do may actually make an impact, which is true. There's always some project-specific requirements that may potentially impact your ROI, but the basis of that is almost constant. The framework would remain pretty much the same. It's fascinating. Let's start with the construction piece. In the early days for us, it was really demonstrating the value at the project level. We're in the business of progress tracking quality because we want the owner always to get the project on time and on budget and get it according to the specs. But then you start bringing these many different project teams, and for all kinds of contractual reasons, for all kinds of relationship reasons, for all kinds of risk reasons, we don't want to get into necessarily in this conversation that you and I have. They say, what is it in it for me? What is it in it for me as an executive? What is it in it for me as a superintendent? And what that really offers. So over our time, we've actually put together many case studies that are downloadable on our website that you can go and say, you know what, I really want to see, as a director of quality control, what is it I can get? I'm focusing on this type of project. What is it I can get? And being able to demonstrate that ROI and bring it with an unlimited number of users so people can scale this up and share that value with everyone, something that's really key. I don't know if you want to be touching on that on the construction side of it.
Yeah, I think there's clearly a lot on the construction transparency, and that ROI has to be top of mind, and that win-win for all parties is critical, because what the CFO of a construction operation has to say about ROI is very different than the carpenter that's putting in steel studs, for example, right? So being able to contextualize that win-win is helpful, and of course, with technology curve adoption, a new technology adoption in construction being a challenge, it's always tough to try to be simple and easy without like blowing people's minds, right? You don't want them to just be so frustrated with something new that they can't do it. So I love that it's win-win for all parties on a project, because that's how you have to approach it.
Now, when we were thinking about this, we thought maybe we should also discuss the journey. Every company, every project team is at a different journey in their maturity of leveraging technology. And this one is fascinating. We had an opportunity to work with Japanese Ministry of Transportation on the standardizing inspection in the country of Japan, which we've been working on it for almost 5 years now. And early this year, April, it became the basis of a standard inspection. And it was really eye-opening for us because there are forward-thinking leaders, both here at home and also obviously in other places, where people say, you know what, we understand the value of AI. We love automated detection of objects for progress tracking, automated defect detection. But you know what? We need to trust that AI. And that means let's go ahead and create a journey that we can first and foremost digitalize our process, automate them, and then eventually expose that AI capability. It's really helpful for everyone because they get the benefit of walking one step at a time, baby steps toward that maturity that they desire based on their own initiative. At the same time, for technology companies, that means, hey, you know what? You can leverage that ground truth data you need for AI training, and with leveraging human in the loop, we can make that perfect. So all in all, this becomes a strategy not only at the company level but at an industry level. We're moving forward the entire maturity of technology, practices, and our own teams at the same time.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Wonderful. I absolutely enjoyed this conversation with you, Steve. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. It's a pleasure to join the conversation. Happy to have joined.
Great. Awesome. Let's head to the next slide.
All right.
All right. Thank you all for joining. So if you look over in the chat, I added a link to a demo. So if you like what you heard and you're not yet a Reconstruct user and you just want to know more about how we can help you with some of your projects, just head right there in that link. It's reconstructinc.com/request-demo. Or you can also, if you just have questions, you don't want a demo just yet, you can reach out to us at mteam@reconstructinc.com. That comes directly to me, and I can direct your questions to the appropriate person within the team. And yeah, so feel free to start adding any questions. We have a few minutes before we end, and I would love to get anyone's questions answered by Steve or Mani, not me. But let's go ahead. Looks like we have one that just started, so let's put that on the screen.
Thank you. Thank you for posting that question. I think Summer's already put the link. Please do reach out to us. I bet you already have some form of a reality capture device. I'm sure you have a camera, which you somewhere on your job site, and I bet you are using some drawing, like the ones that you can put into Bluebeam. So Steve and I would be happy to kind of work with our own respective teams and quickly onboard you. If you bring that video and data to us right now, which is almost 1 p.m. Central Time, before the end of the day, you would have that reality against design ready for use.
So I'll take this. I'll start with this one if that's okay, Mani. So how long does it take to do a capture? And oh man, the answer is it depends. So if it's a simple job, tenant improvement job, it kind of depends on the complexity and the square footage. Whenever I'm setting up a reality capture project, I always try to set up some time to do like a assessment, like a pre-walk. If it's the first time I'm on site, I like to kind of walk it first before I open up either the app on my phone or pull out a laser scanner or hold up a mobile mapping system. I really like to walk it and get a frame of reference. So always schedule time to do that. And then that will give you a frame of reference. If you've used the device a little bit, whichever the form of capture it is, you'll kind of be able in your head to kind of know, okay, as I walk, that I'm going to have to do setups here if it's terrestrial scanning, or if it's using even the 360. I have found you lose time just saying, I'm here, put it on, walk. I really like to orient myself first. So I would say it depends, but always do a pre-job walk to make sure you know the constraints in terms of time and complexity.
Awesome. I think we're about time.
Okay, great. I want to just make sure if there's any other questions that might come through. We have about 2 minutes left, but let me just make sure there's nothing else. Oh, it looks like we have Dylan from Central Pennsylvania. Welcome. I didn't see you there. And so we have Pittsburgh in. Yeah. Okay.
Well, do reach out to us any point in time. As Summer mentioned, mteam@reconstructing.com. We'd be very happy to put you in touch with our customer success team, and we'd be very happy to get you onboarded. You try it, you see the value, and if you had an interest, you can scale it up. And we're going to be there for you to help map out that journey, as Steve and I mentioned before. Thanks.
Great. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Steve and Mani, both for today. It's been a really great fireside chat. Thank you for everyone who joined and asked questions. And if any questions come to you later in mind, like Mani said, just send us an email and we'll get right back to you. Okay, great. Everyone enjoy your weekend and we'll talk soon.
Cheers. Thanks.
Cheers.